The thing about prophets is that it's very difficult to hear what they have to say. In a time of skyrocketing inflation and stagnant wages, the prophet Isaiah utters an invitation from God. You that have no money, come. Buy wine and milk without money, free. Listen carefully, pay attention, listen and you will live. And then the prophetic words around which I hinge my message today. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, and your labor for that which does not satisfy? Personally, I hear these words as both judgment and healing. Judgment because often during the pandemic especially, I've felt the urge to buy something in order to feel better emotionally, and that feeling never lasts. On the other hand, healing because the Word of God accomplishes the purposes for which God sends it, and even in the valley of the shadow of death, God provides us what we need, if not what we want. While on holiday last month, I picked up a book about work. This was not to get ahead, but to gain perspective. I've often found that I'm able to think most clearly about work when I'm not working. And this particular book was about one of my very favorite prophets, Henry David Thoreau, and his philosophy of work. The book's titled Henry at Work, Thoreau on Making a Living. These facts I knew. On July 4th, 1845, a few days before he turned 28, Thoreau went off-grid. As his compatriots celebrated American Independence Day, he declared his own kind of independence. He walked 2 miles from his home in Concord, Massachusetts, down to Walden Pond, and he would live there for 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days. Other facts I did not know. Thoreau graduated from Harvard. The year he graduated was the Panic of 1837, which sparked an economic recession, and it meant that the job market was brutal. In 1842, his brother and his best friend, John, died suddenly from a tetanus infection from a simple razor cut on his finger. And in 1844, Thoreau and a good friend accidentally set fire to 300 acres of woods outside Concord, and the newspaper called them out on it. And so by 1845, Henry was ready to quit, and I don't blame him. Trace the shared contour lines between his circumstance and ours. We too are living through a time of panic and economic upheaval. We too are struck down without warning by things that we cannot see. Pandemic for sure, but also more close to home. On Thursday, I learned that the father of a kid in my daughter's class was out of town, swarmed by wasps, got stung, and died, my age. On Friday night, an elderly woman was walking across the street when a truck turned, hit, and killed her. That is 100 feet from my front door when I was making dinner. And we too are living in a world where the forest is on fire, and the smoke stings our eyes, and the air hangs heavy. This was Thoreau's world. This was Isaiah's world. This is our world. and through the smoke and the hidden specter of death and economic anxiety, both prophets lead us to ask, what sort of lives are we living? I'd like to share with you 3 practices that I'm learning from my reading of Isaiah and Thoreau, and perhaps something for you to ponder when you're on the dock or on a patio or out on a walk this summer. Those 3 practices are, number 1, quit your job. Number 2, get your hands dirty. Number 3, do not compute. First one, quit your job. Thoreau writes, "It is not enough to be industrious, so are the ants. What are you industrious about?" As the book's authors extend the thought, if our work is about the wrong things, then so too is our life, and that is more than enough reason to quit. So too, it is not enough to be retired. What are you retiring to? Wherever you work, whomever you work for, homemaker, self-employed, CEO, day laborer, your life and your labors are your own. When I say quit your job, I don't necessarily mean turn in your resignation, but I do mean interrogate your job, take a vacation from it, step back from it and look at it sideways and upside down to try to see it from a different perspective, and let Isaiah's question be your own. Why spend money on what cannot nourish and your wages on what fails to satisfy? Number 2, get your hands dirty. The authors write, now find a bit of physical work, preferably something you're not horrible at. Gardening, washing dishes, bathing the kids, hammering a nail, and try to attend to the experience. Can you tell where the soil ends and you begin? Can you feel the warmth of the water changing who you are? Can you feel the sensation of the nail being driven home? When the Apostle Paul encourages us to pray without ceasing, I don't know that he means a separate thing that we do in our head necessarily at a certain time and place. Paul made tents for a living. He made and mended tents. He was called a tent maker, and he worked with his hands. And I would propose that his insistence regarding prayer without ceasing had more of a monastic bent, that the gardening and the washing and the hammering and the mending was itself the prayer, or was the way that when your hands are dirty and you're doing something else, sometimes our spirits are freed up in a way that's more fruitful. Is there a manual task that you don't mind doing or you must do? This month, fashion that as your prayer and pay attention to what happens on the inside. Number 3, do not compute. At many times in my own life, I have felt not like a good human, but like a bad robot. For I have often idealized and thus internalized productivity as the end-all and be-all of work. And that can take you a long way until it can't. The authors lament, and Thoreau was literally there as the Industrial Revolution is breaking forth and watching this shift. They lament, machine work meant machine-like lives, and the machine needs no rest, no leisure time, no life outside work. The machine is the ideal worker. All merely human workers fall short of its perfect productivity. With the advent of artificial intelligence, AI, it may be that the church of the future will be pastored by robots. mining the web in 30 seconds to deliver the most powerful and theologically articulate sermons from human history. Maybe they will bring vacuum-packed communion directly to your bedside. They will listen to your questions, hopes, and fears and always respond with 98% pastoral accuracy. Until then, you've just got me and Liska and Jess and one another. Fellow humans, bad robots all, telling stories and making meaning and learning to follow Jesus Christ in real time and in all the real ways that matter. This month, I invite you to do something that does not compute, that makes no sense apart from loving God and trying to love your neighbor. Quit your job. Get your hands dirty. Do not compute. I'm going to leave you with the words of one of our greatest living prophets, Christian poet, philosopher, farmer, Wendell Berry. And this is an excerpt from his poem, Manifesto, The Mad Farmer Liberation Front. So, friends, every day do something that won't compute. Love the Lord. Love the world. Work for nothing. Take all that you have and be poor. Love someone who does not deserve it. Denounce the government and embrace the flag. As soon as the generals and the politicos can predict the motions of your mind, lose it. Leave it as a sign to mark the false trail, the way you didn't go. Be like the fox who makes more tracks than necessary, some in the wrong direction. Practice resurrection.